The alarms had been screaming for 20 minutes, when Kang Do-hun finally accepted that death had come to Beacon Station. He stood in the cargo bay of his small ship, listening to the chaos outside. People were running through the corridors. Children were crying. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the deep boom of weapons hitting the station's outer walls. The Veth Dominion had arrived, and they had brought enough firepower to turn the station into dust. Do-hun was 53 years old. His hair was gray at the sides. His hands were rough from years of loading and unloading cargo. He had left his soldier's life behind 15 years ago, after the war on Earth had taken everything from him: his wife, his daughter, his reason to fight. He had come to the stars looking for peace, looking for a quiet life among the cargo routes and trading posts. Peace, it seemed, had not been looking for him. "We need to go." Yoon-hana burst through the door. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair and grease stains on her engineer's uniform. She had been working on the ship's engine when the attack started. "The escape pods are launching. If we don't move now, we'll be trapped here." Do-hun did not move. He was staring at a metal case in the corner of the cargo bay. It was old, covered in scratches and dents from years of travel. He had carried it with him across a dozen star systems. He had never opened it, not once in 15 years. "Do-hun," Hana grabbed his arm. "Are you listening? The Veth are cutting through the station's defenses. They'll be inside within the hour." "I know," he said quietly. Through the small window of the cargo bay, they could see the Veth ships. There were dozens of them, massive warships with dark hulls and glowing weapons. The Veth Dominion ruled over 6 alien species and controlled thousands of worlds. They had been conquering the galaxy for 10,000 years. Humans were nothing to them. Insects, a minor species that had only recently crawled out of their home system. The station shook as another blast hit the outer ring. Hana stumbled, catching herself against the wall. "Please," she said. "We have to run." Do-hun walked to the metal case. He knelt down and placed his hand on the lock. It was a simple mechanism, designed to open only for his fingerprint. He had promised himself he would never open it again. He had promised his dead wife, as he held her body in the ruins of their home. But promises made to the dead did not protect the living. The case clicked open. Inside, resting on red silk, were 2 swords. They were beautiful in the way that weapons of death are sometimes beautiful. One was long, with a curved blade that caught the light like water. The other was shorter, straight, designed for close fighting. Both were old. Both had been passed down through his family for more than 400 years. Hana stared at them. "What are those?" "My inheritance," Do-hun said. He picked up the longer sword first, feeling its weight in his hand. It felt like meeting an old friend. An old, dangerous friend. "Go to the escape pods, Hana. Get as many people on board as you can." "What about you?" Do-hun stood up. He slid the shorter sword into his belt and held the longer one at his side. "I'm going to buy you time." Hana's eyes went wide. "That's insane. The Veth have plasma rifles. They have armor that can stop bullets. You can't fight them with swords." "I've heard that before." Do-hun walked toward the door. "The people who said it are all dead now." He did not look back. The corridors of Beacon Station were filled with smoke and fear. People pushed past him, running toward the escape pods. They did not notice the man with the swords, walking in the opposite direction. They were too busy trying to survive. Do-hun moved calmly through the chaos. He had learned long ago that panic was useless. Fear was useless. The only thing that mattered in battle was the next step, the next breath, the next cut. Everything else was noise. He found the Veth boarding party in the main plaza. There were about 50 of them. They were tall creatures, nearly 3 meters high, with gray skin and 4 arms. They wore black armor that covered their bodies like shells. In their hands, they carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. They were laughing as they shot, fleeing civilians. To them, this was not war. This was entertainment. Do-hoon stepped into the plaza. The Veth noticed him immediately. One of them, probably an officer, pointed at him and said something in their language. The others laughed. A human with primitive weapons. How amusing. The officer raised his rifle and fired. Do-hoon moved. The plasma bolt passed through the space where he had been standing. But he was no longer there. He was already among them. His blade, singing through the air. The first Veth fell before it even understood what was happening. The second fell a heartbeat later. By the time the third hit the ground, the laughter had stopped. What happened next would be recorded on security cameras and watched by billions of beings across the galaxy. They would watch it again and again, trying to understand what they were seeing. A single human, moving through armored soldiers like wind through grass. His swords rose and fell in patterns that seemed almost beautiful. Bodies dropped around him. Blood painted the walls. The Veth tried to fight back. They fired their weapons. They swung their fists. They called for reinforcements. None of it mattered. Do-hoon was not fighting them. He was dancing with death, and death was his oldest partner. 47 Veth soldiers entered the main plaza. 11 minutes later, Do-hoon stood alone among their bodies. He was breathing hard. There was blood on his face, on his hands, on his swords. Most of it was not his. He looked up at the security camera, and, for just a moment, the galaxy saw his eyes. They were not the eyes of a monster or a demon. They were the eyes of a tired old man who had simply remembered what he was. In the escape pod bay, Hana watched the security feed with her mouth open. "What is he?" Someone whispered beside her. Hana thought about the question. She thought about the old stories from Earth, about warriors who trained their entire lives to master the blade. She thought about the wars humanity had fought against itself, century after century, perfecting the art of killing. "He's human," she said quietly. "He's just very, very human." The escape pods launched. Hana made sure she saved the security footage before she left. The galaxy needed to see what one human could do. The video spread through the galaxy like fire. Within hours, every species under Dominion rule had seen the footage from Beacon Station. They watched the human with 2 swords walk into a room full of Veth soldiers. They watched him walk out alone. The video was copied, shared, whispered about in dark corners where the Dominion could not hear. On the Dominion homeworld, the High Council watched the same video in silence. "This is impossible," said one council member. "Our soldiers wear armor that can stop starship weapons. A blade cannot cut through it." "And yet," said another, 47 of our finest lie dead." The council argued for hours. Some said the video was fake. Some said the human must have used some hidden technology. Some said it was simply luck. But deep in their hearts, they all felt something they had not felt in centuries. Fear. Admiral Korath did not speak during the meeting. He simply watched the video again and again, studying the human's movements. Korath was old for his species. Nearly 400 years. He had conquered more worlds than he could remember. He had never lost a battle. But he had also never seen anything like this. "Find him," the High Council ordered. "Find him and kill him before this story grows." Korath bowed his head. "It will be done." Far across the galaxy, on a damaged freighter drifting through empty space, Do-hoon sat alone in the cargo bay. His swords lay across his lap. His hands were shaking. Hana found him there an hour later. "You're hurt," she said, noticing the cuts on his arms and face. "It's nothing." "Nothing?" Hana sat down across from him. "I watched you kill 50 aliens with swords. I think I deserve an explanation." Do-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to speak. "On Earth," he said, "humans spent 10,000 years learning how to kill each other. Every culture, every civilization developed its own methods. Swords, spears, arrows, fists, We turned murder into an art form. We created schools and philosophies around it. We passed the knowledge from generation to generation. He touched the longer sword gently. This blade was made in Korea 400 years ago. It has killed many people. My father taught me how to use it. His father taught him. Genta, we come from a long line of warriors, Hana. A very long, very bloody line. But why? Hana asked. Why would anyone dedicate their life to something like that? Because we had to. Dohun looked up at her. His eyes were sad. We were not always peaceful. Humans fought humans for thousands of years. The strong conquered the weak. The skilled survived. The unskilled died. It was brutal and ugly and wrong. But it made us into something. Something what? Something dangerous. Dohun stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, stars drifted by in the endless dark. The Veth have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. They have technology that can destroy planets. But they forgot something important. They forgot what it means to fight with your hands, your body, your spirit. They forgot what it means to look into an enemy's eyes as you kill them. He turned back to Hana. We never forgot. We never could. Hana thought about this. She thought about the history lessons she had learned as a child. The wars, the genocides, the endless cycle of violence that had marked humanity's past. She had always been taught to be ashamed of that history. Now, for the first time, she wondered if there was another way to see it. What happens now? She asked. Now we run. Dohun picked up his swords. The Dominion will be looking for me. They can't let the story spread. They can't let other species see that one human with 2 pieces of metal can defeat their soldiers. But the video is already everywhere. I know. That's what worries me. The freighter's captain, an old man named Bae Jung-sik, called them to the bridge. He was a trader who had been doing business in this sector for 40 years. His face was lined with worry. We have a problem, Jung-sik said, pointing at the scanner screen. Dominion patrol. 3 ships. They're heading straight for us. Dohun studied the screen. The Dominion ships were small, fast attack vessels, probably sent to find survivors from Beacon Station. Probably sent to find him. Can we outrun them? Hana asked. Not a chance, Jung-sik said. Our engines are barely holding together. We'll be in weapons range within the hour. Dohun turned to look at the captain's daughter, Bae Yuri. She was young, maybe 19, with her father's stubborn jaw and her mother's quick eyes. She had been watching Dohun since he came aboard, with a mixture of fear and fascination. There's another option, Yuri said quietly. We have a shuttle. And do what? Her father demanded. Crash into them? Yes, Yuri said. Exactly that. The bridge went silent. No. Jung-sik said firmly. Absolutely not. I am not losing my daughter on some suicide mission. Father. If they catch us, they'll kill everyone on board. At least this way. Some of us might escape. She's right, Dohun said. Everyone turned to look at him. She's right, he repeated. A shuttle crash might not destroy a Dominion ship, but it would damage it. Slow it down. Maybe buy enough time for the freighter to reach the jump point. You're actually considering this? Jung-sik's voice cracked. She's a child. Jung-sik, I'm not a child, Yuri said. Dohun looked at her for a long moment. He saw something in her eyes that he recognized. It was the same thing he had seen in the mirror many years ago, before the war, before everything changed. You're not going alone, he said. Yuri blinked. Dohun picked up his swords. I'm coming with you. We won't crash into them. We'll board them. Board a Dominion warship? With swords? I've done it before. Dohun allowed himself a small smile. Well, something similar. Hana stepped forward. This is insane. You can't just walk onto a Dominion ship and fight your way through hundreds of soldiers. I can, Do-hun said simply. I have, and I will do it again. He looked at each of them in turn. The galaxy is watching now. They've seen what one human can do. If we run, if we hide, that story dies. But if we fight, if we win, that story becomes something else. It becomes hope. Yuri nodded slowly. There were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. I'll prep the shuttle. Jungsik grabbed his daughter's arm. Yuri, please, don't do this. She hugged him tightly. I have to, Father. Some things are bigger than us. 20 minutes later, the shuttle launched. Do-hun sat in the co-pilot seat, his swords across his lap. Yuri's hands were steady on the controls. Ahead of them, the Dominion flagship waited. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. The shuttle hit the Dominion flagship like a bullet. Yuri had aimed for the hangar bay doors, knowing they were the weakest point in the ship's armor. The impact threw both of them forward against their restraints. Metal screamed. Fire bloomed. Then everything went dark. Do-hun woke to the sound of alarms. He was hanging upside down, still strapped into his seat. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. Through the cracked windshield, he could see the hangar bay of the Dominion ship. Emergency lights flashed red. Soldiers were already running toward the crashed shuttle. He reached over and touched Yuri's face. She was unconscious but breathing. Wake up, he said softly. I need you to wake up. Her eyes fluttered open. Did we make it? We're inside. Can you move? Yuri tested her arms and legs. I think so. Nothing feels broken. End quote. Do-hun unbuckled his harness and dropped to the ceiling of the overturned shuttle. He helped Yuri down, then handed her a small pistol from the emergency kit. Stay here, he said. Hide behind the wreckage. Don't come out until I come back for you. 7. I see round. And if you don't come back? Do-hun paused at the shuttle's emergency exit. He kicked open the door and stepped into the hangar bay. 20 Veth soldiers were waiting for him. They had formed a half-circle around the crashed shuttle, their weapons raised and ready. Their officer stepped forward, a tall creature with gold markings on his armor. Human, the officer said in broken English. You have made a mistake. Drop your weapons and surrender. The Admiral wishes to speak with you. Do-hun drew both swords. The metal sang as it left the sheaths. Tell your Admiral, he said, that I'm coming to speak with him now. The officer gave the order to fire. Do-hun moved. What happened in that hangar bay would later be called the First Dance. Dominion historians would study the security footage for centuries, trying to understand how one human could move so fast, strike so precisely, kill so efficiently. They would analyze every step, every cut, every breath. They would never understand. Because what Do-hun did was not about speed or strength. It was about something deeper. It was about a lifetime of training, passed down through generations. It was about understanding the human body so completely that you could push it beyond all normal limits. It was about the strange, terrible beauty of violence perfected. The 20 soldiers fell in less than 3 minutes. Do-hun stood among their bodies, breathing hard. His arms ached. His legs burned. He was not a young man anymore, and his body was reminding him of that fact with every heartbeat, but he could not stop. He walked out of the hangar bay and into the ship. The Dominion flagship was called the Eternal Victory. It was 3 kilometers long, carrying over 3,000 soldiers and crew. It had never been boarded in its 200 years of service. Its corridors were wide and well lit, designed for the comfort of its Veth masters. Tonight, those corridors became a hunting ground. Do-hun moved through the ship like a ghost. He did not try to hide. He did not try to be clever. He simply walked forward, his swords ready, killing everything in his path. The Veth tried everything. They sent soldiers. They sent security drones. They sealed doors and flooded corridors with gas. They tried to trap him in force fields, and burn him with automated weapons. None of it worked. Do-hun cut through doors like paper. He destroyed drones with single strikes. He held his breath through the gas and walked through fire. Every obstacle they threw at him, he overcame. Every soldier they sent against him, he killed. On the bridge, Admiral Korath watched through the ship's internal cameras. His 4 hands gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that the metal bent. "How is this possible?" whispered one of his officers. "He's just one human. He doesn't even have proper weapons." Korath said nothing. He was watching the human's eyes. They were calm, focused, almost peaceful. This was not a man fighting for his life. This was a man doing what he was born to do. "Send the elite guard," Korath ordered. The officer hesitated. "Admiral, the elite guard is—" "Send them. All of them. Now." The elite guard was the pride of the Dominion military. 100 soldiers, each one genetically enhanced and cybernetically augmented. They were faster than normal. Veth, stronger, more durable. Each one had been trained since birth to be a perfect killing machine. They met Do-hun in the corridor outside the bridge. For 17 minutes, the battle raged. The corridor was too narrow for all 100 guards to attack at once. So they came in waves. Do-hun cut them down wave after wave, his swords never stopping, his feet never still. He was wounded many times. A blade cut his shoulder. A fist cracked his ribs. A plasma bolt burned his side. But he did not fall. He could not fall. There was too much depending on him. Finally, the last elite guard dropped to the floor. Do-hun stood alone in a corridor painted with blood. His breathing was ragged. His vision was blurring. One of his swords had broken during the fight, and he held only the shorter blade now. But he was still standing. He walked to the bridge door and cut through it with 3 strikes. Inside, Admiral Korath waited alone. His officers had fled. His guards were dead. He sat in his command chair, watching the human approach, with something like respect in his ancient eyes. "You have done something remarkable," Korath said. "No one has ever reached this bridge. No one has ever defeated my elite guard. You should be proud." Do-hun stopped a few meters away. Blood dripped from his wounds onto the polished floor. "I'm not proud," he said. "Then why? Why do all this? You could have run. You could have hidden. Why throw your life away for a species that has only been in space for 200 years? Do-hun thought about the question. He thought about his wife, who had loved flowers and laughter and the smell of rain. He thought about his daughter, who had wanted to be a teacher. He thought about all the people he had loved and lost. "Because someone has to," he said. "Because if I don't fight, no one will. Because humans don't know how to give up." Korath nodded slowly. "I have studied your species. I know your history. So much war, so much death. You killed each other by the millions, century after century. I always thought it was a sign of weakness." He stood up from his chair. "Now I understand. It was practice." Do-hun raised his sword. "Any last words?" Korath drew his own blade, a ceremonial weapon that had hung on his wall for 300 years. "Only this. Whatever happens next, I am honored to have faced you." They fought. It was brief. Korath was old and skilled, but he had not truly fought in centuries. Do-hun was wounded and exhausted, but he had been fighting his entire life. The human's blade found the admiral's heart. Korath fell. His last breath escaped as a sigh. One feed. One feed. One feed. Do-hun stood over the body for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back through the ship, back to the hangar bay, back to Yuri. He found her still hiding behind the shuttle wreckage, the pistol clutched in her shaking hands. "It's over," he said. "We're leaving." They took an escape pod. Behind them, the Eternal Victory drifted dark and silent, a ghost ship full of the dead. In the distance, The other two Dominion ships were fleeing at full speed. They had seen enough. Do-hun collapsed the moment the escape pod's door closed. Yuri screamed his name and rushed to his side. He was pale, so pale, and his breathing was shallow and weak. Blood soaked through his clothes from a dozen wounds. During the fight, during the endless killing, he had not allowed himself to feel the pain. Now, with the adrenaline fading, his body was demanding payment for everything he had put it through. "Stay with me," Yuri begged, pressing her hands against the worst of the wounds. "Please stay with me." Do-hun's eyes fluttered open. "The ship. Did we? It's over. You killed them all. The Admiral is dead. The other ships ran away." Tears streamed down her face. "You did it. You won. Won." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Good. That's good." Then his eyes closed, and he did not wake up again. The escape pod drifted through space for 6 hours before the resistance found them. Yuri did not know there was a resistance. She had never heard of the secret network of rebels that existed beneath the Dominion's rule. But they had been watching. They had seen the video from Beacon Station. They had tracked the freighter, then the shuttle, then the escape pod. They had been waiting for a moment like this for centuries. Their ship was old and battered, crewed by beings from a dozen different species. Their leader came aboard the escape pod personally to see the human who had killed Admiral Korath. Her name was Choi Unji. She was human, middle-aged, with gray streaks in her long black hair. She had been born on a Dominion prison world and had spent her entire life fighting against the empire that had enslaved her people. "Is he alive?" Unji asked, kneeling beside Do-hun's unconscious body. "Barely," Yuri said. "He needs a doctor. He needs surgery. He'll have everything he needs." Unji touched Do-hun's face gently. "This man just changed the galaxy. The least we can do is keep him breathing." They took him to a hidden base on a frozen moon. The Resistance had doctors there, equipment, medicine. For 3 days, they worked to save his life. Yuri refused to leave his side, sleeping in a chair beside his bed, holding his hand when the nightmares came. Hana arrived on the second day. The freighter had made it to the jump point and escaped. Captain Jungsik had contacted the Resistance as soon as he heard what happened. "I can't believe he actually did it," Hana said, staring at Do-hun's sleeping form. "I watched the video. The whole galaxy has watched the video. He killed over 300 Veth soldiers. By himself. With swords. He's not invincible," Yuri said quietly. "He's just a man. A very broken, very tired man. A man who just became the most famous human in the galaxy." Unji joined them on the third day, when Do-hun finally woke up. His first words were, "Where are my swords?" Yuri laughed, the sound mixed with tears. "You almost died, and you're worried about your swords? They belong to my father." And his father before him. Do-hun tried to sit up, then gasped as pain shot through his body. "I need them." "The longer one broke during the fight," Unji said. "But we recovered the pieces. Our craftsmen are reforging it now. The shorter one is safe." Do-hun relaxed slightly. "Thank you." "No, thank you." Unji sat down beside his bed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. They've conquered species that had technology far beyond anything humans possess. They were invincible, unstoppable, a force of nature." She leaned forward. "And then you walked onto their admiral's flagship with 2 pieces of metal and killed him in his own chair." "I was trying to survive," Do-hun said. "Nothing more. It doesn't matter what you were trying to do. What matters is what you did." The video has been seen by trillions of beings across the galaxy. Slave species who have lived under Dominion rule for thousands of years are watching a single human defeat their masters with ancient weapons. Unji's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "You've given them something they haven't had in centuries. You've given them proof that the Dominion can be defeated. Do-hun was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his hands, still bandaged, still healing. He thought about all the lives he had taken, all the blood he had spilled. "I'm not a hero," he said finally. "I'm not a symbol. I'm just an old soldier who was too stubborn to die." That's exactly what a hero is. Over the next few weeks, Do-hun healed slowly. His body had been pushed beyond its limits, and the damage was severe. The doctors said he might never fight again. He told them to wait and see. During this time, Unji shared the intelligence she had gathered. The Dominion High Council had responded to Admiral Korath's death with fury. They had ordered a full investigation, executed several officers who they blamed for the failure, and most importantly, they had begun assembling a fleet. 100 warships, Unji said, showing him the data on a holographic display. The largest fleet they've gathered in 300 years. They're calling it the Purification Fleet. Purification of what? Hana asked. Humanity. Unji's voice was heavy. They've decided that humans are too dangerous to exist. They're going to Earth. They're going to burn it. The room went silent. How long do we have? Do-hun asked. 6 months. Maybe less. Yuri stood up, her fists clenched. We have to stop them. We have to do something. With what? Captain Jungsik had arrived earlier that day, joining the group. We have maybe 50 ships, most of them old and poorly armed. Earth has a defense fleet of 30 ships. Against 100 Dominion warships? It's hopeless. It's not hopeless, Do-hun said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The Dominion wins through fear. They've conquered the galaxy not because they're invincible, but because everyone believes they're invincible. I just proved that belief wrong. He pushed himself out of bed, ignoring the pain, ignoring the protests of the others. He walked to the window and looked out at the frozen landscape of the moon. There are thousands of species under Dominion rule. Billions of beings who hate their masters. They've seen the video. They've seen what one human can do. Once other. If we can reach them, if we can train them, if we can give them hope. He turned back to face them. We can build an army. Unji stood up slowly. You're talking about a galactic revolution. You're talking about overthrowing an empire that has existed for 10,000 years. Yes, it's impossible. So was killing Admiral Korath. The room was silent again. Then Hana spoke, her voice steady. You taught me something on the freighter. You said fear is not the enemy. Hesitation is. If we hesitate now, Earth dies. Humanity dies. Everything dies. She walked over to stand beside Do-hun. I don't want to hesitate anymore. One by one, the others joined them. Yuri. Jungshik. Unji. The resistance members who had been listening outside the door. Do-hun looked at them all. This strange collection of humans and aliens, old and young, soldiers and civilians. They were not an army. They were barely even a crew, but they were willing to fight. Then let's begin, he said. We have 6 months to save the galaxy. The first world they visited was called Dust. It was a mining planet, home to a species called the Keth. They were small creatures, barely reaching Do-hun's waist, with large eyes and delicate hands. For 2,000 years, they had dug precious metals from the ground for their Dominion masters. For 2,000 years, they had been beaten, starved, and worked to death. When Do-hun arrived, they were terrified. The Blade Human, they whispered. The one who killed the Admiral. Why is he here? What does he want from us? Do-hun walked into their main settlement alone. He carried his swords openly, but he did not draw them. He simply walked to the center of the plaza and sat down. I am not here to hurt you, he said. I am here to ask for your help. The Keth elders came forward slowly. They had seen the video. Everyone had seen the video. They knew what this human could do. What help could we possibly give? The eldest among them asked. We are miners. We have no weapons, no ships, no soldiers. You have yourselves. Do-hun said. You have your anger. Your hatred for the masters who have abused you for centuries. That is all I need. He stood up and drew his short sword. The Keth flinched back, but instead of attacking, Do-hun reversed the blade and offered it handle first to the elder. Take it. Feel its weight. This is just metal. It has no magic, no special power. But in the right hands, it can kill a Dominion soldier just as easily as a plasma rifle. The elder took the sword with trembling hands. It was heavy, awkward, unfamiliar. I can teach you, Do-hun said. I can teach all of you. Not to be soldiers, not to be warriors, but to be dangerous. To be the thing the Dominion fears most. And what is that? Do-hun smiled. Prey that fights back. Over the next month, Do-hun traveled to 12 worlds. On each one, he told the same story. He showed them the video. He showed them that the Dominion could be defeated. And then, he began to teach. Not everyone could learn the sword. The body shapes, the physical abilities, the cultural backgrounds were all too different. But Do-hun had spent his life studying combat. He knew that every species, every body, every culture had its own way of fighting. On Dust, he taught the Keth to use their mining tools as weapons. Their pickaxes became deadly in close quarters. Their small size let them move through tight spaces where larger soldiers could not follow. On a water world called Deep, he taught the swimming species there to fight underwater. Their tails became weapons. Their teeth became weapons. Their knowledge of the currents became weapons. On a jungle planet with no name, he taught the tree-dwelling natives to attack from above. They had never thought of their claws as anything but climbing tools. He showed them otherwise. Word spread. The Blade Human was gathering an army. The Blade Human was teaching the slaves to fight. The Blade Human was coming. The Dominion responded. They sent assassins. Do-hun killed them. They poisoned water supplies. Hana developed countermeasures. They took hostages, threatening to execute them unless Do-hun surrendered. He did not surrender. He attacked the prison camps, freeing the hostages and adding more soldiers to his growing army. But not every mission was a success. Not every battle was won. On a moon called Grey Rock, 30 of Do-hun's students were ambushed. They fought bravely, killing many Dominion soldiers before they fell. But in the end, all 30 died. Do-hun stood over their bodies, his face empty of expression. Yuri watched him from a distance, afraid to approach. She had never seen him like this. I trained them, he said quietly. I told them they could win. I gave them hope. You gave them a choice, Unji said, coming to stand beside him. Before you came, they had no choice. They lived as slaves and died as slaves. Now they died as warriors. They're still dead, yes. And more will die before this is over. That is the price of freedom. Do-hun said nothing. He picked up the swords of his fallen students, one by one, and placed them in a pile. Later, he would have them melted down and reforged into new blades. Nothing would be wasted. That night, Yuri found him sitting alone on a cliff, staring at the stars. His father's swords lay across his lap, cleaned and shining. Do you regret it? She asked, sitting down beside him. Every day, he admitted. Every time I send someone into battle, I wonder if I'm sending them to their death. Every time I teach someone to kill, I wonder if I'm turning them into a monster. You're not a monster. No? He turned to look at her. I've killed hundreds of beings. Yuri. Maybe thousands. With my own hands. With these swords. I've painted corridors red with blood. I've walked through rooms full of corpses that I created. Yuri did not look away. And how many people have you saved? How many worlds have you freed? How many slaves are now fighting for their own future because of what you showed them? It doesn't balance out. Death doesn't work that way. Maybe not. She reached out and took his hand. But you're not fighting for balance. You're fighting for hope. And hope is worth dying for. Meinik. Do-hun looked at her for a long moment. She had grown so much since Beacon Station. The frightened young pilot who had offered to crash her shuttle into a warship was now a warrior in her own right. She had trained harder than anyone, learning the sword until she could almost match her teacher. When did you become so wise? He asked. Yuri smiled. I had a good teacher. The months passed. The fleet grew. What had started as 50 battered ships became 200. Then 300. Slaves from across the galaxy flocked to Do-hun's banner. They came with stolen ships, salvaged weapons, and hearts full of rage. Hana became the fleet's chief strategist, coordinating operations across dozens of star systems. Captain Jungshik commanded the flagship, an old Dominion cruiser that the Resistance had captured years ago. Yunji managed the spy networks, gathering intelligence on the Purification Fleet's movements. And Yuri became Do-hun's shadow. Where he went, she went. Where he fought, she fought beside him. He had never asked her to do this. She had simply decided it on her own. You're not going to die alone, she told him once, when he tried to argue. You saved my life. The least I can do is protect yours. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection. Even legends. Finally, after 6 months of fighting, hiding, training, and bleeding, the Resistance was ready. They had gathered 400 ships. They had trained thousands of warriors. They had freed dozens of worlds and recruited millions to their cause. It was not enough. Against the Dominion's Purification Fleet, it would never be enough. But it was all they had. Do-hun stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the assembled fleet. Small ships and large ships, alien ships and human ships. A collection of the desperate, the angry, and the hopeful. The Purification Fleet enters the Sol system in 3 days, Hana reported. They have 112 warships. We have 412. But most of ours are smaller and weaker. Numbers don't matter, Do-hun said. Spirit matters. Courage matters. The willingness to die for something greater than yourself matters. He turned to face his crew. Today, we go to save Earth. Today, we fight for humanity's future. Today, we show the galaxy that the Dominion's reign is over. He drew his sword and raised it high. For Earth. For freedom. For all the slaves who died in chains. 400 voices echoed his words. The final battle was about to begin. The Purification Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system at dawn. 112 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their dark hulls blocking out the distant stars. They were the largest fleet the Dominion had assembled in 300 years. Each ship carried thousands of soldiers. Each soldier trained and equipped to exterminate the human species. Their commander, High Admiral Verath, was the oldest living member of the Veth species. He had conquered more worlds than any other being in the galaxy. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and brought entire species to extinction. He had been chosen for this mission because the High Council wanted to send a message. Humanity would be erased from existence. There would be no survivors, no records, no memory that they had ever existed. Earth's defense fleet was waiting for them. 31 ships, arranged in a desperate line between the Dominion and the blue planet behind them. They were outgunned, outmatched, outnumbered, but they did not run. High Admiral Verath studied the human formation with mild curiosity. They actually intend to fight. How amusing. Sir, one of his officers reported. We're detecting additional ships emerging from behind Earth's moon. How many? 47, sir. They appear to be resistance vessels. Verath allowed himself a small smile. So the Blade Human has come. I had hoped he would. Signal all ships. Reserve one boarding party for the human's flagship. I want him taken alive if possible. And if not possible, then bring me his head. The battle began with fire and light. The Dominion fleet advanced in perfect formation, their weapons tearing through space. The human ships returned fire, but their weapons were weaker, their shields thinner. Within the first 10 minutes, 5 Earth vessels were destroyed, but the humans did not retreat. They reformed, closed ranks, and kept fighting. On the Resistance flagship, Do-hun watched the battle unfold. He stood with his arms crossed, his face calm, his swords hanging at his side. Beside him, Yuri was gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles were white. "They're dying," she whispered. "They're dying out there. They're fighting," Do-hun corrected. "There's a difference." Hana rushed over with a datapad. "The Dominion formation is breaking up slightly." "Good." Do-hun had been waiting for this. "Tell Captain Jung-sik to begin the second phase." Do-hun had been waiting for. The second phase was simple in concept, impossible in normal warfare. Throughout the Resistance fleet, thousands of warriors waited in small boarding pods. They were humans, Keth, deep swimmers, tree climbers, and a dozen other species. All of them had trained under Do-hun. All of them carried blades. At Jung-sik's command, the pods launched. High Admiral Verath noticed them immediately. "What are those? Some kind of missile?" "They appear to be." "Transport pods, sir. Very small. Heading directly for our ships. Intercept them." But there were too many pods, and they were too small. The Dominion weapons, designed to destroy starships, could not track targets so tiny and quick. For every pod that was destroyed, 10 more slipped through. They hit the Dominion ships like rain. In the corridors of the Dominion warship Eternal Conquest, soldiers watched in confusion as alarms began to sound. Breach alerts. Hull penetrations. But these were not missiles or bombs. These were people. The doors exploded inward, and the warriors came through. They were not graceful like Do-hun. They were not perfect. They were former slaves and miners and farmers who had been given weapons and training and a reason to fight. But they were angry. They were determined. And they had learned one crucial lesson. The Dominion did not know how to fight at close range. For 10,000 years, they had relied on superior technology. Their plasma rifles could kill from hundreds of meters away. Their starships could destroy planets from orbit. They had never needed to fight hand to hand. Now, in the narrow corridors of their own ships, that advantage disappeared. The battle became a nightmare. Do-hun's pod hit the High Admiral's flagship in the aft section. He was through the hull breach before the metal stopped glowing. Both swords drawn. Yuri, right behind him. "Stay close," he told her. Always. They moved through the ship like ghosts of death. Do-hun was a force of nature, his blades cutting through everything in their path. Yuri covered his blind spots, her own sword flashing whenever a soldier tried to attack from behind. Behind them came 100 resistance fighters. They were not as skilled as their teacher, but they did not need to be. They only needed to keep moving forward, keep fighting, keep dying, if necessary. The ship's internal communications were filled with screams and confusion. Reports came from every deck. Boarders in engineering, boarders in the weapon bays, boarders everywhere. High Admiral Verath listened to the chaos with growing disbelief. How is this possible? How are they defeating our soldiers? They're fighting in close quarters, sir. Our weapons are ineffective at such short range. Then use your fists. Use your claws. We are Veth. We have conquered a galaxy. But the Veth had forgotten how to use their fists. They had forgotten what it meant to look into an enemy's eyes as they killed them. They had forgotten the ancient, terrible truth that humans had never been able to forget. War is personal. Do-hun reached the bridge in 2 hours. The doors were sealed, reinforced with the strongest metal in the Dominion arsenal. On the other side, 1,000 of the High Admiral's personal guard waited. They were the best soldiers in the fleet, hand-picked for their loyalty and skill. Do-hun touched the door with one hand. Then he stepped back. "Open it," he said. Yuri pressed the explosive charges they had brought. The door blew inward. The fight for the bridge lasted 3 hours. It was the longest 3 hours of Do-hun's life. The guards came in waves, and he cut them down, wave after wave. His arms screamed with exhaustion. His legs burned with every step. The wounds he had never fully healed from tore open again, soaking his clothes with blood. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Yuri fought beside him, her blade a silver blur. She had become a true warrior, graceful and deadly. Twice she saved his life. 3 times he saved hers. They moved together like dancers, their swords singing a duet of death. One by one, the guards fell. Finally, only High Admiral Varath remained. He stood in the center of the bridge, ancient and proud. In his 4 hands, he held 4 weapons: a plasma rifle, a vibroblade, an energy whip, and a shield. He had not fought in combat for 200 years, but he had not forgotten how. "The blade human," Varath said. "I have watched the videos. I know what you can do, but I am not like Korath. I am not soft. I am not weak." Do-hun was barely standing. His right arm was nearly useless. Both of his swords were cracked and dull. Behind him, Yuri was on her knees, bleeding from a wound in her side. "You look tired," Varath continued. "You look old. You look like a man who has nothing left." "I have enough," Do-hun said. They fought. It was not beautiful. It was not graceful. It was 2 exhausted warriors throwing everything they had at each other, knowing that only one would survive. Varath was fast, faster than any being Do-hun had ever faced. His 4 arms attacked from different angles simultaneously. His weapons were a blur of death. 3 times he cut Do-hun. 3 times Do-hun should have died. But Do-hun did not die. He moved on instinct, on muscle memory, on the legacy of 400 years of training passed from father to son. He blocked. He dodged. He struck. His sword broke. Varath laughed and raised his weapons for the killing blow. Yuri's sword took him through the back. The High Admiral looked down at the blade protruding from his chest. Then he looked up at the young human woman standing behind him. "Impossible," he whispered. "No," Yuri said. "Just human." Varath fell. Do-hun caught himself on the command chair, breathing hard. The battle was over. The High Admiral was dead. Around them, the sounds of fighting were fading as the last Dominion soldiers surrendered or died. "Is it over?" Yuri asked, collapsing beside him. Do-hun looked out the viewport. In the distance, Earth hung blue and green, and beautiful. Around it, Dominion ships were drifting dark, their crews dead or captured. The human defense fleet, battered but unbroken, was securing the survivors. "Yes," he said. They had won. The news of the Battle of Sol spread across the galaxy in hours. The Purification Fleet, the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in 300 years, had been destroyed. Not by superior technology, not by a massive armada, but by warriors with blades, fighting hand-to-hand in the corridors of the enemy's own ships. The High Admiral was dead, killed by a human woman barely out of her teenage years. And at the center of it all was Kang Do-hun, the Blade Human. The man who had started a galactic revolution with 2 swords and a refusal to give up. On 1,000 worlds, the slaves rose up. They had seen the videos. They had heard the stories. They had learned that the Dominion could be defeated, not with ships and bombs, but with courage and steel. Mining tools became weapons. Kitchen knives became weapons. Fists and claws and teeth became weapons. The Dominion tried to respond, but their forces were spread too thin. Every soldier they sent to crush one rebellion was a soldier who could not stop another. Every ship they destroyed was replaced by 2 more stolen vessels. Every victory they won came at a cost they could not afford. Within a year, the Dominion had lost half its territory. Within 5 years, it had collapsed entirely. The High Council, once the rulers of 10,000 worlds, surrendered to a delegation led by Choi Unji. They were old, tired, and broken. They could not understand how their empire had fallen so quickly. How? One of them asked as they signed the surrender documents. How did one human destroy everything we built? Unji looked at them with something like pity. He didn't destroy anything. He just reminded the galaxy what it had forgotten. And what is that? That tyranny only survives as long as the oppressed believe they cannot fight back. Do-hun did not attend the surrender. He was on Earth, in a hospital in Seoul, surrounded by doctors who could not understand how he was still alive. His body had been broken in the Battle of Seoul. The wounds, the exhaustion, the years of pushing himself beyond all human limits had finally taken their toll. His heart was failing. His kidneys were failing. His muscles were wasting away. The doctors gave him 6 months to live. He lived for 7 years. They were quiet years. Peaceful years. He stayed in a small house in the mountains, near the village where his grandfather had been born. In the spring, cherry blossoms fell on the old stone paths. In the autumn, the maple leaves turned red and gold. Yuri visited him often. She had become a legend in her own right, the woman who killed the High Admiral. But she was still the same girl who had offered to crash her shuttle into a warship, brave and stubborn and fiercely loyal. She brought him news from across the galaxy. New governments were forming. New alliances were being signed. Human martial arts academies had opened on 100 worlds. The swords of Earth hung in museums from one end of the galaxy to the other. They're calling this era the Age of the Blade, she told him one afternoon. They say you changed everything. Do-hun was sitting in his garden, watching the cherry blossoms fall. His hands were thin and weak, unable to hold a sword anymore. But his eyes were still sharp, still alive. I didn't change anything, he said. I just reminded people what they already knew. And what's that? That strength isn't about technology or numbers. It's about the will to fight. The courage to stand up, even when you're afraid. The refusal to give up, even when everything seems hopeless. He smiled at her, a small, peaceful smile. Humans have always known this. We learned it the hard way, through thousands of years of fighting each other. It's written in our blood, in our bones, in the very core of what we are. Is that what you taught the galaxy? No. That's what I reminded them. Every species, every culture, every being has the capacity for that kind of strength. They just forgot. The Dominion made them forget. I helped them remember. Hana visited when she could. She had become one of the most important diplomats in the new galactic order, traveling from world to world, helping former enemies become allies. She looked older now, her hair streaked with gray, but she smiled more than she used to. The Galactic Council voted to name a star system after you, she told him. The Do-hun system. It has 3 habitable planets. They want to make it a monument to the revolution. Tell them to name it something else. Like what? Do-hun thought for a moment. Tell them to name it Hope. That's what we were fighting for. Cross. Captain Jungsik came too, though less often. He was old now, retired from active service. His daughter's victory over the High Admiral had made their family famous across the galaxy. He did not entirely know how to handle that. She's a hero, he said to Do-hun during one visit. My little girl is a hero. She always was. She just needed the chance to prove it. And Unji came. At the end, she found Do-hun in his garden on the last day of autumn, wrapped in blankets, watching the last leaves fall from the maple trees. He knew she was there before she spoke. The doctors say you don't have much time left, she said, sitting beside him. They've been saying that for years. This time they mean it. Do-hun nodded. He had known for weeks. His body was finally giving up, finally accepting the rest it had been denied for so long. Are you afraid? Uni asked. And, no. He watched a leaf spiral down to the ground. I've been afraid many times in my life. Before battles, before speeches, before every decision that might get someone killed. But I'm not afraid of dying. Why not? Because I know what I'm leaving behind. He turned to look at her. His eyes bright, despite his failing body. When I started all this, I was just trying to survive. I didn't want to be a hero, or a symbol, or a legend. I just wanted to protect the people I cared about. And now? Now I know that's exactly what a hero is. Someone who protects others. Someone who gives them hope. Someone who shows them that they're stronger than they believe. He closed his eyes. I'm tired, Yoonji. I've been tired for a long time. But it's a good kind of tired. The kind you feel after a job well done. Unji took his hand. It was cold. So cold. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything. Do-hun smiled. His last words would become humanity's creed among the stars. Spoken by warriors and diplomats, and children for generations to come. We do not seek war. But when war finds us, we become what war fears. He died that night, surrounded by the people who loved him. They buried him in the village where his grandfather was born. On his grave, they planted a cherry tree, grown from seeds that Yuri had brought from the capital. A simple stone marked the spot, with only his name and 2 dates. No titles, no honors. No mention of the battles he had won, or the empire he had toppled. Just a name. In the spring, the cherry tree bloomed for the first time. Pink petals drifted down over the grave like gentle rain. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to pay their respects to the man who had changed everything. But the tree did not care about legends or revolutions. It simply bloomed, year after year. A reminder that beauty could exist even in a universe that had known so much pain. And far across the galaxy, on worlds that had once been slave pens and prison camps, beings of 1,000 different species looked up at the stars and remembered the lesson they had been taught. They were not weak. They were not helpless. They were strong enough to fight, strong enough to win, strong enough to build a future worth living. That was Do-hun's true legacy. Not the battles, not the blood, just hope, endless, unbreakable hope. And the legend never died.